This Economist podcast is sponsored by iTrust. Did you know that you can invest in crypto through your retirement account? That's right. iTrust Capital allows you to invest in over 24 of the most popular cryptocurrencies. And unlike the stock market, you can buy and sell 24 hours a day. With iTrust Capital, you also get the tax benefits of a retirement account while investing in crypto. Sign up today and receive a $100 funding bonus when you open and fund an account. Visit itrustcapital.com to start investing today. That's itrustcapital.com. Taxes and conditions apply. Fees apply. Cryptocurrencies are a speculative investment with risk of loss. iTrust Capital Inc. does not provide legal investment or tax advice. Consult with a qualified legal investment or tax professional.
I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift. Candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. My friends, I am here with my friend Randy, and we go back just a couple years. We've been friends now for over 10 years.
Easily over 10 years. It's been a long time. I was trying to track it, and I don't know that I can exactly, but it's been a while. It's been a good long run.
Good long run, and we've seen each other through different versions of our lives and different parts of our journey. And you were actually a very helpful component of one of my major life shifts. And I vividly remember that, and I appreciate that. So you were there for that. But as you know,
I was going to say, I so respect like how you went through that shift. It's a complicated thing. And I do feel like I was there for a lot of that experience and your process. And I looked up to that and really respected that. It was very inspiring.
I appreciate that. It was a totally different journey. And after this episode airs, I will be telling my story, and my episode 1 guest, Kristen, will be flipping the script with me. So she'll be on the other cool. side.
I love that.
So, well, the listeners will get to hear a little bit more of the full story of the life shifts. But as you know, I've asked people to just come on this podcast and share those pivotal moments that have really changed people's lives forever. And I've heard so many stories. And what's really cool about it is people's stories are quite different, but there are a lot of common threads in the way we approach positive, negative, scary, fun, exciting, all these moments. And it's just really brought me back to realizing that we're just humans, right? Going through the same things, even though the circumstances are a little bit different. So I appreciate you jumping on here and sharing a little bit of your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd like to start just kind of painting the picture of what your life was like leading up to kind of this major shift that we plan on talking about today. Can you give us a little backstory?
Sure, Matt. Even as I'm sitting here sort of like, getting revved up for this chat, I was thinking back, like there's certainly a big life shift that I think we're going to talk about, but I start tracking backwards. And as a creative person and or an actor and a writer and a director in my life, I feel like I've come up to those points so many times.
Yeah.
So it's interesting just to sort of, reflect on my life every time I, talk to anybody about my journey and my story. It's just really wild. But, I grew up in a small town in Mississippi, and I was a sort of local child prodigy. And what that means, being a child prodigy in a small town, like I could do something cool that nobody else in town could do. And so you think, I'm going to make it.
How small are we talking?
Oh, we're less than 20,000. Maybe less than 15,000.
All right. So that's more impressive than like 20 people.
Oh, well, sure. I guess. I don't know. But I was on that was my path. Like most of my life is, up until I, graduated from high school. And the plan was to be a concert pianist. I thought that was going to be my life. And at the last minute, I sort of panicked and didn't want to go down that road. And I wanted a college experience. I wanted, a football team, and I wanted weekends and real classes and real friends. And so I ended up going to Florida State, where I got into the theater, sort of threw it all away to be a journeyman actor.
Had you not done theater as a child?
I had not. I was always very interested. Growing up in Mississippi, I didn't have many outlets for that. I didn't see much theater. I wasn't around it. Certainly nobody in my family did what I do. So I was just kind of like wandering blind into this, but I was always very interested and always curious about putting on shows and seeing shows and showbiz people. Like I was back in the, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with variety shows and award shows. Anytime I could see the stars, like that was always kind of a fascinating world for me. But I got into the theater in college and then set off on that journey. I moved to New York after school and then just kind of made it up as I went along. And I go that far back because I feel that like that's how far I have to swing for this big shift that I just went through. I didn't know a soul when I moved to New York City. I moved in with a friend of a friend of a friend, made friends right away. I certainly didn't know anybody in showbiz, and nobody prepared me for that. I just kind of started making my way, and all I had been taught was that if an opportunity comes up, say yes.
Right.
And that's what I did, and I did that for better or worse. I did that a lot. But one of my first like big jobs as when I first moved to New York was in an off-Broadway musical called Smoke on the Mountain, where all of the actors have to play like 4 or 5 instruments. And a lot of my friends, people that I was kind of getting to know over the first couple of years that I was in New York, and they said, oh my God, you have to be in this show. You play the piano. I was like, yeah. So I went and I saw the show, and they were playing every instrument. And like the part that I would eventually play, he was playing the piano, the upright bass, the guitar, the mandolin, and the violin.
Oh, is that all?
And I was like, well, I can't do that. And they were all just passing off instruments and singing, and it was wild. I was like, yeah, I can't do that. Well, I ended up getting an audition for it just by word of mouth. And one of the questions that they asked me in the room was, do you play the violin? And I, flashing back to some moment in college, I said, yes.
Of course.
Immediately, like it's that moment you like want to reach out there and grab that word and shove it back in your mouth. I said yes, and they said great, and I started rehearsal the next Monday.
Oh no!
So, yeah. Well, I think what happens is like I think if somebody says like, "Do you tap dance?" you say yes, and then you go learn how to tap dance. No offense to tap dancers in the world, but I feel like you can pick up a couple of little, flat ball change and,
Well,
whatever.
not me, but most people, yes.
I think more than picking up a violin and discovering, wait, you mean there's not marks on here?
Yeah.
I have to find the note, tune the note myself. But I did it, and I learned to play the violin and the upright bass and the guitar and the mandolin and played the piano. And that was my first sort of like big show in New York, because it was a huge hit back in the 90s. And
how long were you in that?
I was in that till it closed, and then I ended up doing lots of productions of that show afterwards, directing productions of that show. And again, like this is where the big slingshot happens, like all the way back here for my big life shift, is that all the way back there, I was just saying yes. I was on what somebody just referred to, I saw it on social media today. Somebody said autopilot. And I went into like sort of creative, artistic autopilot, where I went where the opportunities were happening. If something came up, I was like, well, that looks cool. I'll try that. I'll do that. Yes. If I got asked to, whatever it was, directing or music directing or, playing the piano at somebody's wedding, I was just saying, yes. Because there were jobs and opportunities. And I just sort of went that way for a long time. And it worked out.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like we should all, I'm not saying that you have regrets or anything like that, but I feel like a lot of people don't take those opportunities. And so we should all be so lucky to have the guts to say yes. So in that part, I commend you for that.
in the moment I said yes, even like now, I don't really consider myself that confident a person in general, but I flash back to moments like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
God, you've got, I don't know what that took, but I blurted out yes, and it set it all in motion. But you catch yourself doing that for a long time. And no, I don't have any regrets about any of it. Like, moving to New York City and being an actor and being on Broadway and being in films and TV shows, that was never on my radar as a kid. I thought I was going to play the piano the rest of my life. That was going to be it. Maybe New York was in my sights, but certainly none of the life that I've had so far was the plan. And in fact, there was no plan. I was just sort of randomly finding my way in the dark, just taking whatever popped up. And luckily and gratefully, lots of opportunities popped up, and lots of amazing opportunities popped up. And I just kept saying yes up until, I guess, probably I joke that I sort of had a trial run life shift. I sort of let me see if I could really do this. I stomped my foot and I said, I'm leaving New York. I've had it. And it was as sort of as spontaneous as that. And I packed up everything and I moved to Atlanta because I heard there was a lot of film and TV in Atlanta. And I was like, I'm going to go be a TV star in Atlanta. And it
was very sudden.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was like, I've had it. I'm out.
What do you think? What triggered that? Do you know?
It was probably, at the time, I really was sort of struggling, working too hard, too many jobs, juggling too many things just to stay afloat in New York.
Because you were teaching there, right? You were in a show.
I was teaching at NYU. I was in a show. I had so much going on, but I was just kind of in an angry place, I think, and fed up, and saw something better in Atlanta because I wanted to, do more film and TV. And I packed it up, threw what I couldn't move right away into storage, and I moved to Atlanta and I rented an apartment. And I started auditioning and I got jobs, and I was like, oh, what have I done?
So the grass was not greener?
Yeah, it was green. But I had thrown myself into something without really doing the research, without planning ahead, I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know anybody in Atlanta. I made friends, and through auditioning and kind of just, doing the thing that actors know how to do, and that everybody knows how to do, but actors are particularly good at self-promotion, kind of putting yourself out there. But I don't know, when I caught myself auditioning for random regional commercials where, I think I have played every hillbilly farmer in every hillbilly farmer commercial. And I remember on audition, they brought me in, and they have these big boards in front of you when we used to go do this in person. And it said, Goody got it. And I knew I was auditioning for Goody's powder, this kind of powdered aspirin thing.
That looks like cocaine. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's the one. And they said, that's the copy. Just give us 5 of those. And I was like, wait, Goody got it? That's it? And they're like, yeah, just give us 5 of those. You want to make some changes, but you want to give them some choices, but I just kind of went for it and was like, Goody got it. Goody got it. Just 5 ways. And they're like, okay, just 5 more, but just say it. And it was the line was, Goody got it. 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 They're like, great, Randy, that's awesome. Booked it from
your 5. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, what
so
is
fulfilling.
Yeah. So all of that to say, yes, grateful for the job, but here I was again, what am I doing? didn't know where I was, or didn't really know kind of my way around Atlanta. So I would always show up to these auditions like lost or sweaty or just out of my mind. And again, very spontaneously, very spur of the moment, I rented a U-Haul, backed it up to my apartment building, threw everything in my truck in the middle of the night, and I drove all the way back to New York City, like in one shot from Atlanta, starting at like after midnight. And quite seriously, that may have sparked the real like turning point, because I felt all of this stuff coming up in me. I was driving and thinking like, what had I done? I had these amazing opportunities in New York, and I should be running back to New York. I should be just, taking every opportunity that I get in New York. And why did you move? And there were times where I would grip the steering wheel so hard and just scream. As I was driving, I would just scream as loud and as hard as I could, trying to bring this stuff up to the surface so that I could see it.
Right.
I was just lost. I pulled into New York City, I think as the sun was going down, and just exhausted. I didn't want to like show up at any of my friends' house and say, I'm back. So I kind of parked my truck at the storage place and fell asleep, and then woke up to a guy peeing on the front left tire of the truck.
Welcome to New York.
I'm home. I am home.
Do you think that you had to go to Atlanta, though, for the rest of, where you are now? Do you think Atlanta played that role to kind of like keep nudging you in the direction that you are?
Probably.
Because I feel like knowing you for so long, you're such a creative that something like the example you provided about the goodies powder, something like that is, sure, it's going to pay your bills. It's going to help pay your bills, maybe not pay all your bills, but it's going to help in that, you're going to survive on it. But that's zero fulfillment likely for you, almost to the point of like, this is a waste of my time. This is a waste of the things that I can be doing right now. So that's why I wonder if that Atlanta trip, did you do anything there that was creatively fulfilling?
Certainly not accessing as many of my own personal resources as I could have. Yeah. I went there to be a film and TV actor and a voiceover actor, and just to, I had a TV agent in Atlanta, and I was auditioning all the time and booking a line here and a line there, like, great. But again, it wasn't that kind of fulfilling work. And I don't like to sound like I'm not grateful for any of the work or any of those opportunities, but I'm trying to sort of like paint a picture here where you can be doing amazing things and still have that itch under there. And just even the stuff that's coming to me like in the moment with you right now is so, it is shocking to track your life or trace your life, kind of like follow those major points. But would I have made a big change at some point without Atlanta? Probably. I was sort of on my way anyway, and discovering, as we all have, that, in the world today, we don't have to be in New York City to do this. We don't have to be in LA or Chicago or, the sort of centers.
But you did probably when you first moved to New York. You had to be there.
There were no options. Like, I worked out of town and, doing regional theater and summer stock and things like that. But you had to be in New York to be an actor, especially if you wanted, to be a Broadway actor.
Right.
And a writer and a director. You had to that was where it all kind of spun out from. But as I started to kind of discover that these days we can be just about anywhere to do, if you want to be a creative person in theater, TV, and film, you can be pretty much anywhere and get it done. even in-person auditions are sort of a thing of the past. That's feels like a relic now. I did one not too long ago, and I was like, what are we doing? Can't I just sit at home and do this on my computer? Yeah, that move to Atlanta, I don't know. It was a very bizarre choice and a very bizarre move, and I made some good friends that I'm still in contact with, and there were some sort of like nuggets that came out of that experience, but mostly I just flew back to New York to do what I think really set off the big move.
Yeah.
Which is I was just saying yes to everything. I was like, I'm never gonna do anything like that again, and I'm gonna just get everything out of New York that I ever wanted to get out of it.
Right.
But it felt random, and it felt very what is that expression? Catch can. I'm like digging up old-fashioned phrases today.
So vintage of you.
Yeah, very strange.
Are you still friends with the guy that was peeing on your U-Haul?
No, I did not get his name. But he marked my truck, and forever.
The rest is history. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you got back to New York after Atlanta, like, you jumped back into what you were doing, or were you more selective?
I was less selective, I think. I jumped back into teaching right away. Happy that they were willing to take me back. I think everybody knew that I would be back.
Right.
But there's
so
also
kept it open for you.
Yeah, they kept it all open. They're like, we'll just wait. There he is. He's back. But in New York, like, you could be gone I think I was gone for about 9 months. I got back, and you run into people and you expect them to throw their arms out. Oh my God, you're back. Where have you been? And they're like, it's like you saw them yesterday. Like, nobody even noticed that I had been gone. But yeah, I jumped back into all of the things I had been doing previously, but it turned out to be like probably the busiest concentrated amount of time that I lived and worked in New York. Was that after Atlanta, I came back just fully loaded, ready to, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I really do this. And I did. Like, lots of great things came up, and jumped right back on the pony. And
what year did you go back to Atlanta? I mean, back to New York, sorry.
Must have been like 2005, 6, 7, somewhere in there, because yeah, that's right. No, now I'm getting things out of order. Was
when I painted your kitchen after you moved back from Atlanta?
Yes.
Yeah, during the hurricane. And Beyonce was pregnant.
My kitchen was blue.
And we had a hurricane.
And so we were trapped in my apartment, and you painted my kitchen.
Yep.
Wow.
It was
That was when I'd pretty much just moved back to New York. So
okay, so that was after Atlanta.
Yeah. And, I started auditioning again, got a new agent, got a new haircut, like did the whole thing, and got a lot of amazing jobs, like had a blast, And once again, that like nagging, what are you doing, kept coming up.
Right.
And this time I could not silence it. I had to really take a deep dive, and spend lots of time looking inward, to either sort of get rid of that voice. I find a way to sort of like silence it, or let it say its thing, and then we could move on, or listen and make a change. Because
Atlanta was kind of just a Band-Aid of the first time, right? That was like, I got to try something, but I'm not going to think about it. This time you did a little introspection.
Exactly. And when I finally made the decision to leave the city, I think the other kind of big difference here is that when I left New York to move to Atlanta, I said, I'm leaving New York.
Right.
That's it. See,
angry.
It was so dramatic. Like, it was just dramatic and empty. When I left this last time, I wasn't like, turning my back on New York and I'm never coming back, slam the door. I knew I'd be back. I knew I'd be working in New York again. All of my friends are in New York, my, lifelong closest friends. And that little run up to leaving, I had to, those moments like where I don't know, it felt like breaking up with New York in some way. And I had to have that conversation with everybody and kind of get myself out of New York. And what happened is that I didn't know where I was going. And that was probably the best thing that could happen. I just knew you gotta move out of your apartment, let go of all the things that all of your routines. You gotta shake it up. And I have a very good friend who said, we're going to be out of the country. Take my house. And she has a house in upstate New York. And so I went up there, stayed in this house for a month, all by myself in the woods, drank wine, built fires, worked in the yard, just whatever I could do. I wrote and thought some more, drank some more, built some more fires, and spent 30 days with myself, coming to a short list of cities that I found interesting and, why I found them interesting, and just kind of my feelings about what I wanted to explore next. And came here to Memphis, which is where I am now, and spent another month, about 30 days, with my sister. She's lived here for a while. And I said, can I just camp out at your house? And from there, I can go visit all these other cities. And I went to visit Austin and out back to LA and up to Portland and back to Atlanta one more time. I went to Nashville just to kind of check out all the different, options. But every time I came back to Memphis, I had a blast. I started looking forward to coming back to Memphis. And finally, I think I was preparing to go maybe back to Austin to give it another try. And I remember telling my sister, I said, what am I doing? I think this is it. I think I live in Memphis now.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, we pretty much knew you were going to say that. And that's how I ended up specifically here in Memphis. But that leap from Halloween 3 years ago to right now, and the life that I look at and the life that I see that that's sprung up around me here, a huge different shift. Yeah, it's a completely different life.
Do you feel like there was a moment in that New York journey, the most recent one, that was like a definitive thing that was like, you need to start thinking about this and get out?
Yeah, something comes to mind right away, and it's one of those moments that was so satisfying and so fulfilling creatively and artistically, but it ended up being one of the major components of this big shift, and me finding the confidence to take on what I've, the work that I'm doing here in Memphis. I was doing an off-Broadway show of an old Rodgers and Hammerstein musical called Allegro, and I was working with the great director John Doyle. And that experience was so challenging, but it was also so fulfilling. And I was doing the kind of work, and John would always say, he does things that he thinks are worthwhile. Is it worth it? Is it worth my time? Is it worth my heart? Is it worth my soul? And he puts all of that into the work, which is clear if you look back to, he's sort of known for, actors who play instruments. And so all of his shows, he did the Sweeney Todd, where everybody played instruments, where Patti LuPone played the tuba. He did Company, and everybody played instruments. So that was, he's sort of known for that, However, he has a huge career, like outside of actor musician shows. He directed The Color Purple on Broadway. That experience was the kind of work and the kind of inside out artistic experience that I wanted to have for myself and I wanted to give other people. And I had not been as selective in seeking out projects, working on whatever I was writing. I was going where the work was. If somebody needed, whatever the need was, I was filling it. But I started being lots choosier about the work I was doing, and really stopping and listening before I, jumped in and just, autopilot said yes. But that John Doyle experience, in and of itself, was a very significant sort of kick in the pants.
Yeah. Did you feel that experience was something you wanted to replicate, and that's kind of why you were like, I don't know if I can do that here in New York, and I want to see if I can do that elsewhere?
That's interesting. Not so much replicate, but right. John directs with so much confidence. Mm-hmm. He's so incredibly smart and directs with so much confidence. And I saw something there, and I was like, I wish, I want that life. I want to be that creative. And his rehearsal process is wild. He tries things and tries again and rewrites. And that's what I saw. And I wanted that experience. I would have a much easier time doing what I'm doing in New York, I think.
Really?
Obviously, yeah. Moving to the Mid-South to start a theater company where there are already a sort of thriving community theater scene here. But throwing myself here to start a professional theater company, it's tough. I'm sure there are lots of sort of pop-up theater companies in New York all the time, and people are starting to. There's somebody talking about their theater company on another podcast right now, I'm sure. But
well, tell us a little bit about it.
Again, it's one of those things that I put a lot of thought and research and time and heart and soul into, because I wasn't gonna just wander into it. I spent a lot of time here in the area, reaching out, getting to know the people here, the theater community here, the film and TV community here, and then community leaders and people connected to the arts, not just in Memphis, but in the Mid-South, down into Mississippi and Arkansas, and over to Nashville. And in this whole area, there is this, I think I said, this thriving theater community, a big community theater.
Really?
World here in this area where people, it's life or death. So I saw a gorgeous production of Hello Dolly at Theater Memphis, which is essentially a community theater here in Memphis. But it was gorgeous and as professional a show as you can imagine. So they're, the idea of showing up and say, hey guys, I'm here from New York City and I'm starting a theater company.
I've seen that movie before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you wanted to get in as a community member versus a stranger from New York.
Yeah, I thought it might be wise to, make friends before I started selling any tickets.
How long was that process for you?
That was a lot of my first, most of the first year here. And that continues. We are doing that kind of work all day, every day. And certainly within the last, during the pandemic, we had ample opportunity to, just cold call and email and just reach out to people and get to know people in the area in the last couple of years. But that's daily. And I think, especially, in any business, networking and reaching out and constantly making those contacts, it's a muscle and you got to build it.
Yeah. Is that part fulfilling for you?
This Economist podcast is sponsored by iTrust. Did you know that you can invest in crypto through your retirement account? That's right. iTrust Capital allows you to invest in over 24 of the most popular cryptocurrencies. And unlike the stock market, you can buy and sell 24 hours a day. With iTrust Capital, you also get the tax benefits of a retirement account while investing in crypto. Sign up today and receive a $100 funding bonus when you open and fund an account. Visit itrustcapital.com to start investing today. That's itrustcapital.com. Taxes and conditions apply. Fees apply. Cryptocurrencies are a speculative investment with risk of loss. iTrust Capital Inc. does not provide legal investment or tax advice. Consult with a qualified legal investment or tax professional.
Even the question makes me anxious because I one of my sort of things that I'm constantly dealing with, and a lot of people are always surprised when they hear this, is that I have tremendous anxiety. And when the idea of like, oh my God, we got this meeting with this really amazing person, because I'm real brave behind my keyboard. I can fire off an email to anybody. But when we actually make contact and then I have to have the conversation, and oh my God, it's so painful to think about. Like on the front side of it, it's terrifying. But once it's done, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Can't wait to do it again.
I guess the reason I asked that is because you spent so much time creating the purpose and understanding what you wanted to put out there. You're more protective of it. And by sharing it, you might have, I just assuming, more pride in it than, say, your Goodies powder commercial that you did back in Atlanta, And so I wonder if that part is fulfilling, sharing that purpose.
Yeah, there is a big part of it that is pride, and that I am proud of what I'm doing now. And I've bragged to so many people lately that I'm actually really happy. Like every project I'm working on makes me happy. And the company has about a dozen projects spinning right now. And I personally am looking at a calendar where I have 4 shows coming up that I'm going to direct. So, and they all make me happy. I said yes to everything because it made me happy. And it's hard work. And there are days where you're like, oh my gosh, like, whew, how are we going to keep, I'm juggling chainsaws over here. How do I keep from cutting my arm off? But yeah, I enjoy all that part of it.
What do you feel that the purpose is of, like, or what did you put together for your company's purpose? Like, why are you there? Why do you exist?
That's a series of little mini life shifts for the company. Because once we sort of set out to do our thing, we were going to be here to make what is known as devised theater. We were going to go into communities and create theater pieces around local stories. And that proved to be, like, even before COVID, that proved to be nearly impossible. People would talk to us and we would, sort of introduce ourselves and kind of make appointments and set up interviews with people in small towns. But boy, that was tough. And I just didn't have the stamina for it. I certainly had the desire and the interest, but I just didn't have the stamina. I was like, and I'm tough. Like when I get my sight set on something, stamina doesn't even come into it. But this was really, it felt like a grind. And I didn't know that people were even interested in what we were coming to sell. They were like, it sounds fun. That sounds great. Like, sure, let's put on a show.
I just thought of Waiting for Guffman as you were saying that. And I started picturing you as Corky St. Clair and your stool boom.
That's exactly what I felt like. That's very, very accurate. Because I don't know. And it just felt so off. Yeah. Like I knew something was off. And then we started kind of trying to reimagine it back then. And well, let's do this, or let's try this version of the company where we do, reimagined classics, and that we tag that onto our name. But right about the same time, we were all plunged into nothingness.
Right.
And what the company had found was that we were really good at sourcing new plays, reaching out to new playwrights and helping them get their shows up. Either a first reading of their play, an opportunity to share their play with another theater. And so in that first year, we had just finished a round of submissions at our choices for that summer, and we were going to put up 4 new plays that summer of 2020. And the pandemic happens, and our plans were like well in motion. But as we all got more comfortable with Zoom, we took those readings online. We got really good at facilitating these readings and working with playwrights and reading new scripts online. So again, we had to shift and figure out, we thought we were doing this. Now we thought we were doing this. It was there, like we were so close.
Right. Yeah.
And we had to take all of that work online. But what that led to, happily, is that we found our strength and we found what people wanted.
Right.
The first year that we opened up submissions for our new plays, we got about a dozen, and we picked 4. The next year, because of the work we put into those and several projects that came up in that year, this past year, we got over 300 submissions.
Wow.
For new plays. We picked 4, and then we made a list of 12, and we've been working through all of those scripts and doing them usually online. We've had several readings now that we can do that in person again. But we found an opportunity to start reaching out and connecting all of these Southern playwrights and playwrights in specifically this area, and giving them a chance to see professional actors read their work for the first time, and started doing in-house private Zoom readings of new works. And so that has led to a more focused mission for us, and that is that we facilitate the development of new works for theater, film, and TV. Oh, and we are just pushing back against a backlog of really great work that we even had to pump the brakes when I sort of made a list of what we were working on. And I said, okay, pause. we can't keep going. We can't keep adding to this list. These are all great projects, and I want to do them all, but we have to slow down and at least start pacing ourselves, because again, I caught myself saying, yes, that's great. I was being choosier, but I was still, remnants of that old me were still in there, that just kind of, I just want to say yes to everybody. I want to give everybody a part.
Do you feel that those yeses were different than early yeses, though, because you were more in your own company sourcing material that you were interested in to begin with? Without a doubt.
That is one thing that I say it's one of my strengths, is that I'm really good at bringing the right people together at the right time, either as a director or a writer, or even when I was an actor. I always felt like I landed in these just real serendipitous moments. And it's one thing that I feel like I've been really good at with the company, is connecting people and creating these new friendships and these new relationships that I see thriving out, in social media. It's so easy to check in with a playwright that we worked with a couple of years ago and see, oh, that play is here. And oh, look, they cast the actor who did that very first reading. It all sort of connects in a beautiful way. And I love that so much. If sitting around and reading plays and, helping people move their work forward was all I did, I would be so happy. Because as a writer, I go back to my first play and that first production, and it's still one of the highlights is to be able to walk into a theater and look around and see your set being built, see costumes being made for something that at one point existed in your head. I know how good that feels. Mm-hmm. And to watch playwrights not only see their work come to life, because it's a tough business for writers, in that there are so many of us out there, and just to kind of get in there and have the opportunity for a handful of actors or a dozen actors get together and read your play and then start talking about it, that is the necessary step in moving any work forward. But that makes me so incredibly happy to see those relationships forming and the network of writers and directors and actors and other creative types that we're building just by, these small readings of new plays.
Well, it's almost, I've talked to a few people now in which, yes, a global pandemic is a terrible thing, and we've all had to face a lot of negative pieces. But in a lot of these conversations, people have said that part of it has been a blessing to have the opportunity to pause. And it sounds like had the pandemic not occurred, you would have moved forward with producing whatever shows were in the pipeline, and you might not have found this specific area that you're really passionate about now. Do you agree? Or
I think a version of that is true, in that we were guns blazing, moving straight ahead for the production of those plays that summer, and who knows where that would have led. But I would have been very happy if that summer had happened. But the pandemic was an opportunity for us to focus. But it also came at a time that brought all of my doubt and questions about the big move, and, setting up home and shop in a totally new city. When I first moved here, as good as I felt about it, I would still, and especially once we started the company, I would wake up and literally every morning I was like, oh my God, what have you done? What are you doing? You fight that voice that's like, everything is in New York, and like that would be so easy, and job opportunities were coming up and people were calling from New York with work, and I had to keep listening and really trusting that I was on this path. But it kept coming up every day. Mm-hmm. That, what are you doing? Are you crazy? And I'd get up, make some coffee, and then sit down and start working on the company and start working on making work, not only for myself, but for everybody else. And the pandemic really just amplified those voices. You are crazy. Like, you've made a huge mistake. If you couldn't do it before the pandemic, you're certainly not going to do it now that we can't do theater at all. So I don't know. Maybe time will tell. Like, you can look way back and see what this time was for everybody. But it certainly has been, it's been interesting for creative types.
Yeah. I mean, I bet those voices, you were able to calm those voices maybe a little bit more because of those 30 days in upstate New York and the time that you were able to spend with yourself to kind of really make this decision with some basis and not just, I want to get out of New York.
Yeah, that was a critical time, I think, because there was so much noise in my head when I left New York.
Yeah.
And had to sort of just quiet the chatter, kind of get in there and like weed out the static, and literal feedback, like just that just noise that we sort of that I lived in New York. I won't speak for every New Yorker, but that time was really, really important because I could quiet the chatter and then hear the voices, the true voices, the ones you want to talk to you. And there were a lot of them. They all had different ideas and different opinions about what I should do next. I was like, okay, you sit down. You're next. We'll be right with you. And had, just had clarity. I remember that's what I said that whole year was about, was clarity. I kept using that word. And I think, it's so funny. You look back and like, I was so clear then. In that moment, I was so clear. I had so much clarity. And then it sort of like steams over and gets blurry. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. I have to rethink my clarity.
What I notice now, and we visited many times in New York City, or when I like to escape, I like to go up there and see shows and stuff. And I visited you many times at different points in your life. And what I notice now is that you seem more centered and more like happy without looking, like this jovial, like Santa Claus or anything. But I feel like when in those visits, it was very hectic times for you living in New York because it was constantly I have this teaching job, but I'm also doing this show, but I'm also writing and working on this workshop, and I'm also doing music, and I'm writing this book, and then my friend's producing an album, so I'm going to go play, at this concert. And it was just it's very loud. Like you said, there was a lot going on. And just in this conversation, I can see that, you looking back on those moments, but how calm relatively this new version of you feels.
Yeah, I'm certainly. I've
Maybe
always
calm's
been very
not right.
Calm is a very interesting word. I was like, yeah, do I wrestle with that word or not? I'm certainly not calm. I'm definitely centered is a really good word for it, because I have intention and purpose in my life now. I approach everything. I feel like
and confidence.
And confidence in the work, just because I'm working out that muscle,
Right.
But what I sort of look back at is like, I was stirring up lots of stuff, for 20 years in New York, just kind of like making a noise, with everybody else, and was moving ahead. But, what does success look like? What is success? I have so many opinions about that now that I certainly didn't have at the time. But it has given me the opportunity to, in order for somebody, first of all, to start their own company, you gotta take care of yourself every day. You gotta wake up and go start the engine every morning. And it requires me to be as committed to myself as I am to the work, which means, the yoga practice, my spiritual practice, all of those things really kind of, I feel like I've come into myself in the last few years, because I recognize the value in taking care of myself. And I, say capital S self, that's the only way to sort of like pursue the kind of work that I'm doing now, is if I believe with all my heart that I'm making the right causes in the world, and doing the kind of work that turns me on, and the kind of work that I think is worthwhile, and reimagining work that, yeah, that sounds interesting to me, but what if, in order to kind of shift things more to something that I would, that means something to me. And if not, then that's somebody else's story to tell. But I feel like that's been the real benefit of it, is just trusting myself and trusting my intention, finding a purpose.
Right.
I loved my life in New York. I loved New York. There was never doubt. Like, once I was there, I was like, I'm not going to go anywhere else. Where am I going to go? This is great. I loved it until the day I didn't. And I knew I had to make that big change, but sort of like jumping off a high dive into the pitch black, I really didn't know what was next. And it just required, all of that soul searching, and continued to sort of like hook into a practice where I can continue to look at myself and look at my work and how those two things line up every day.
Yeah.
That's maintenance.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's awesome. And honestly, and I don't know if you might not agree, because we never agree on anything, but I think that all the things that you went through, and the jumping to Atlanta and finding out that wasn't for you, and going back to New York and going through the grind, you had to do all those things to get to where you are now, to get to that centered version of yourself. You couldn't have skipped any of those.
That primal scream, drive back to New York in the middle of the night, those outbursts shook something loose. I wouldn't wish that experience or that, that moment on anybody, but because it came from a place like just an old, like years and years of routine, and just kind of these knots of saying yes to things that you didn't believe in. And I am in no way, I'm not bashing any of the work I did, but I was just, just saying yes. I was on autopilot and just finding my way through it and having a great time doing it. So I don't, I don't regret any of it, except that you're right. Like everything that happened was a necessary step towards making this big push.
Right.
That I guess on paper doesn't sound that dramatic, but the nuance between, living your life and living the life that looks like everybody else. They're like, what are you, crazy? Like you're actually like doing it. Like you moved to New York and you're like working all the time. And I was like, yeah, it looks great. I am so unhappy.
Yeah. You're happy in the moment of the production or whatever you're doing. And then you go home and you're just, I'm not doing what I want to do.
Yeah. What am I? And maybe I still haven't answered it, but I feel like I definitely I'm on to something right now. Like I know I'm at the beginning of something that I hope will be very interesting further down the line. But it means believing in it 100%. There are days that I want to delete the website and delete all the emails, tell everybody, I'm so sorry. We've had to close our doors. It's not happening, but I can't do that. Like I'm too in it now, and I love it too much. I love the work too much.
I love that for you. Cause for so long I've known that yes, you appreciated the work and all those pieces, but you weren't allowing or you didn't have the opportunity to do the creative components that you really wanted to focus on. And I think too, what's really cool now, especially with this company, is how many people you're affecting with the journey that you went on and made you this person that you are now, and the things that you're going to be able to help others with, which is really cool. Things that you probably wanted people to help you with at the time. Like that Allegro experience.
Yeah. Like you see that you're doing, really having an effect on people. And we're luckily, like we have people coming to us now and we're finding great writers and giving these, not just young writers, but people who sort of come to writing late in their life. They're like, hey, I saw your website and can I send you my play? And we give them a chance to do the thing they want to do and like work with, a community of people that I've been a part of for 20 plus years now. Yeah, it is 100% fulfilling, and to kind of just be in the earliest stages of the company. We're just now starting to do work live and in person, just because we've been incredibly cautious, and I hope that continues. And so we're just about to announce a full slate of public stage readings, kind of back to where we were, when the pandemic began. But we're a baby company. We're going to keep listening to the feedback and listening to the voices and listening to ourselves and really looking at the work and going towards what we want to do, more than what we should do or what we should do that. That's a hot topic right now. We should do that play.
Well, I am happy to see you in this version of yourself, because you definitely feel like, or it feels like you're in the right spot and you're doing the right things and you're leading with what you really feel is your purpose, which is super cool to watch. And I appreciate you sharing your story with everyone, because I think a lot of creatives it'll resonate with a lot of creative people that kind of do what other people tell them to do, because that's what's next and that's what they're supposed to do, like saying yes, right? Yeah. But eventually there's hope that you will find your purpose and be able to pursue that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And I have to say, like you start connecting to a network of friends and folks who are also in that same place, like people kind of reaching out, and you start to connect. And I've really been so motivated and inspired by your journey, and that we're sitting here having this conversation on your podcast. It's now been out for weeks. I'm like, it's crazy. Like, this guy did not exist. I'm just telling you that this person would not be putting himself out there like you are now. And I just think that's a beautiful thing too, that we come around to something that like just makes us happy. And that might be it. Like, that might be what it's all about. Like, Just land on the things that make us happy. You know, can we be done with awards and prizes for artistic endeavors, and just, you know, let's just do what makes us happy. Like, is it good? I don't know. I had fun doing it. You know?
Yep. About the experience, the lived experience. Thank you for sharing yours. I appreciate you, my friend. Hopefully we'll reconnect in person after this pandemic's all over.
That would be great. And you're so welcome. This was so fun talking. And you've stirred up lots of memories and lots of things to sit and think about now.
Well, you're most welcome for that. I hope they're all good ones that you can learn from. I appreciate you, my friend. We'll speak to you soon.
Yes, thank you.
I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information about how you can support the Life Shift podcast, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com. See you next time.
This Economist podcast is sponsored by iTrust. Did you know that you can invest in crypto through your retirement account? That's right. iTrust Capital allows you to invest in over 24 of the most popular cryptocurrencies. And unlike the stock market, you can buy and sell 24 hours a day. With iTrust Capital, you also get the tax benefits of a retirement account while investing in crypto. Sign up today and receive a $100 funding bonus when you open and fund an account. Visit itrustcapital.com to start investing today. That's itrustcapital.com. Taxes and conditions apply. Fees apply. Cryptocurrencies are a speculative investment with risk of loss. iTrust Capital Inc. does not provide legal investment or tax advice. Consult with a qualified legal investment or tax professional.